everybody, it's Allison. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know I said I was going to be back last week with this video. All I can say is it's summer and I am moving a lot slower than normal. But here are the two cards that I'm going to share today. And obviously they're featuring the Acetate Sheets Classic Mouse collection. And today we're going to be looking at the press plate. And we're going to be doing two things with the press plate. I introduced this in my last video. Here is the press plate. It's the Steamboat Willie press plate. And I have my hot glimmer machine. And by the way, here's the die that comes with the set that cuts out the plate that has the musical notes. Now I have acetate here. And we're going to foil on acetate. And there's the acetate. And I have black opaque foil, which is one of my favorite foils, especially on acetate. And so I'm just going to put the plate on the glimmer machine. And you always want to put the foil face down onto the plate. So the colored part of the foil touches the top of the plate. And then you have the acetate on top, or paper, but in this case, acetate. Now I'm going to press the timer button and it's going to flash. Now it's flashing very quick here. That's just because I sped up this part of the video. This lasts about not quite a minute before it stops flashing, and that means it is ready to go. So as soon as that green light is solid, I can take this out and take it to my die cutting machine. And this just goes right through the die cutting machine, just like your normal base does. All right, so let's see what we have. I'm gonna get this plate off the glimmer machine onto the little cooling mat. And let's see what we have. Now I just grabbed a colored piece of paper so we could see it better. And it foiled great. Look at him. It's just such a classic image. All right, so that is hot foiled on acetate. And now we have the better press system right here. And we're going to ink this up. So I'm putting my plate onto the base there, and I'm just putting a piece of paper onto the other side and taping it with the best ever craft tape from Spellbinders. And I'm just making sure that paper is covering the plate. And I'm going to use VersaFine Clair, but here is the Better Press ink. You'll see it's smaller. I've had luck with my pigment ink, so that's what I'm using. And I'm going to zoom in a second here. I just wanted to make sure that his ears were solid, like all the solid parts were evenly covered, so they are. So I'm going to go ahead and put this top plate on and run it through my die cutting machine. This is just like the glimmer system. You take your normal plates out of your die cutting machine and run this through. And it looks pretty good. Now I have some splotches around the image. And that's because I have this plastic film on my base, just to keep my base clean. And I also use this big pigment ink pad. So you can see I'm not even being careful here, just to show you that the ink gets onto the base. So I'm just taking my little stamp chamois and wiping that off. And now this really doesn't concern me because the way I'm going to be using these images, I don't care that there were splotches. I'm just showing you now, if you do get splotches, what you can do. Just wipe them off before you run it through. If I had used that Better Press ink, the little cube or the little guy that comes with the machine and that comes in all sorts of colors, and here we are. Here's the impression that we got. Now there's some parts that I didn't get a great impression of because I wasn't really trying to get it. I could run it through again, but again, I don't it doesn't really bother me. I don't need the full image because I'm going to be cutting this image out into little pieces. This is My Life in Pictures, that film strip. And so I'm just going to be playing here, trying to decide what little images I want. Now, going back to the little ink pad, the Better Press ink pads, they're smaller, so you don't have the same situation where I had the big ink pad making marks on my base. If you have that little ink pad, it's just not going to get everywhere. So just something to consider when you're inking up your press plate. Okay, now I have some pattern paper, and I want it on the right side of my paper, so I have to put the press plate on the left side because it's kind of, you're stamping it upside down, so you kind of have to remember that when you're inking these up. Now I have some Pinkfresh ink in Slumber. I've said this before, I have had luck using Pinkfresh inks. I don't have a whole lot of, or I didn't until recently, I didn't have a whole lot of the Better Press inks. There's a bunch of new inks coming out that I'll be showing you. So here I'm just inking that up and I'm going to run it through. And I tried to pick a color blue that kind of blended in with these little polka dots. This is Doodlebug paper. And here is the card. I know that was kind of rushed. I didn't go through the assembly. But you'll see the way I decided to have the images in that film strip, I did have to stamp that image a third time. But you'll see, because they're just little parts of that image, that's why those little splotches didn't matter. And the golly, how cute is that? The letters come from the classic mouse alphabet, and the little exclamation point comes from the, I think it's called Numbers and Punctuation set. The sentiment, You're How Old, that comes from, I believe it's an old MFT stamp set. And I added some little musical notes, and you'll see that on the next card, which is right here. So this is the card that I use the acetate, the pieces of acetate that I foiled, and so that's what we have here. And I have this little frame. This is called the Memory Frames. This is from the classic Pooh collection, and it's a little Polaroid frame. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out how I want to frame this image, and I'm going to add some Scor-Tape to the back of this. When I adhere things to acetate, I almost always use Scor-Tape. I know some people don't like that. Some people like using glue, but you'll see these really thin sides of this frame. I'm always worried that if I put glue, it's going to squish and get on the acetate. So that's, I don't know. I just like using the double-sided tape. So I added all the acetate, or all the tape, and now I'm just adding the frame on top of the acetate. And now I'm just trimming away the acetate around the frame. I'm trying to kind of get under the frame while I'm cutting that. And so here I have a bunch of frames. I think those are 5 frames that I glued together. And that's going to create a little well that I can then put shaker bits in. So right here, I just was cutting a plain piece of white paper to make sure it was the same size as this frame. That's going to be the back to my shaker to hold in all the little bits. So I'm gluing this to the back of that stack that I had made. So here you can see the well. And I have some shaker little beads from Pretty Pink Posh. I love these beads. And now obviously this is not what the card looks like that you just saw, but bear with me. I'm just showing you how I assembled the shaker mechanism. So now on the front of this stack, I'm adding more Scor-Tape. And then I can add the piece that I had before, which was the, the top frame that I had added to the acetate. So there was the shaker, and here is me ripping it apart. This is why the video that was meant to come out last week is just coming out. I don't know what is going on with me. I'm being very indecisive lately. I'm like, I think the summer heat is getting to my brain. But here, it was really easy to disassemble. It's just a matter of taking off the back piece. And I have my little tray from Simon Says Stamp here, so I can just dump these little beads back in. And I mean, it was really easy to disassemble. I wish I could say it was as easy to decide on things that day, but here's the final design, and we'll go through it. Now, these are the classic mouse borders, this piece that has all these little musical notes, and of course it's the perfect little embellishment for that image. Now, the paper comes from this Craft Consortium Ombré paper pad, and you'll see I found a piece for the backing, or the back of the shaker, and then this piece right here was the background for the shaker. And I used some leftovers for the smile, which comes from the Hello Smile die set. And again, I just found a random little sub-sentiment from my stash to stamp on there. And there's the card. Now, as far as these shaker bits that I added in here, I added in just some pale blue and white and some clear little, I think they're 4mm sequins. And I felt like you could just appreciate Steamboat Willie a little bit more when the beads weren't so busy. You see Steamboat Willie, and the shaker bits are just kind of secondary, but still fun, obviously. If this video and the last video are the only videos that you have watched from me, I promise that I don't always dismantle cards in my videos. In fact, I can't think of any that I've dismantled since then. So anyway, it is now July, and we are heading into Christmas in July. And it's one of my favorite times of the year for card making. And there's a lot coming up. So I will be seeing you quite a bit. Hopefully, I shouldn't even make promises anymore, but I do have several videos planned for the next few weeks. So I hope to see you then. I appreciate you being here. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.